Okay. So, welcome to another episode. The title is The Next Non-Place, and I would like to speak about, I would like to share my commentary. Just talk a little bit about how, as 1 out of 8 billion human beings on this earth, I have made observations on what potentially the afterlife could be. So that's it. Pretty much, I wanted to, while I'm alive in this world, to share and, in some sense, talk about how I see what's going on here. Now, something I've noticed is that the human intelligence may sometimes be so clueless that it might want to worship a clue. Okay? We as human beings in this world are, in some sense, carriers of a very ancient process. And so imagine there's some people carrying a torch, like imagine Olympians during when the Olympic events begin or whatever. And now imagine the passing down of a genetical torch. You, dear listener, are not just a human being, are not just an object with your own specific subjective value. You are the eyes of the purpose of all human life, really. When a person can have friends and enemies in this life, in their lifetime, right? But at some point you realize the ancestors of all of our enemies and friends, they were walking the same way. You see, this is the hilarious thing about this world of ours. Regardless of how many types of good and evil beings or creatures and entities there are, they're all headed the same place. You see, because the world is walking there. Imagine there's a giant that is walking, and this giant, on top of its head, right? The giant has no clue we're there, but imagine 8 billion human beings are living on the top of this giant's head, okay? And the giant doesn't even notice that we're there. And so all the people on this giant's head are like, yo, I want to do this, we're going to go there, we're going to do that, but it's all being moved based on where the giant goes. So I think it's a fair thing to say that the microcosmic is being pulled by the macrocosmic, and the microcosmic is pushing the macrocosmic. So the individual is pushing forth in time, and the collective is pulling the individual through time. You see, talking about death, this was something that before, a week ago or something, I had the biggest realization of my life. And I freed myself from the one-sided expectation of my own analysis as a being. So what that means is it's think of the human experience as this, biochemical creature, this biochemical mechanism that the moment you wake up, pretty much from the moment you wake up to the moment you sleep, you are an existential physical being that has the capacity to non-physically direct your existence. And pretty much what I'm trying to say, You see, there's, I don't know, actually I'm thinking how to say it, like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, you know, but when I look at this world, it's not so easy to accept it as a world. Even though contrary to popular belief, you ask everybody, they're like, yo, we're just these creatures that have appeared on this giant rock. We just need to be content and living, just get by and journey through this life. You know, it's kind of like, you know, we're all travelers and we're just trying to, you know, it's the quality of our journey. You know, that means you don't have a choice as consciousness. Consciousness can be best defined as an unknown traveler. Think of it this way. We have this idea that there was a physical world, and then as something, as a part of it separated from it, right? We have this view that there was physicalism. Imagine a physical dimension, and then something physical in that dimension separated from the rest and started walking on the rock, right? So we as human beings, when it comes to understanding our body, we're like, our body, there's this like massive chunk of existence, like as if the whole world is like the rock, and then Michelangelo sculpting it is like the free will, right? What I'm trying to say is when we come to pinpoint our existence, it's a separation from the totality of existence. When a person wants to pinpoint consciousness, it's a separation from the totality of space. Consciousness is how space separated from space. Embodiment is how matter separated from matter. You right now are a being that were separated as space, and now you have become matter. So the idea is, after you discover, even if you read the Upanishads and the sacred texts, okay, like guys, I think what I just said was one of the newest and most incredible things I've ever said. Okay, existence, like it's this massive existence, one whole thing, then a part of it separates from it. Oh man, a body in the world. And then we had in some sense treating space like space to us is empty. Doesn't mean it's freaking empty. Okay? There's so many things to the human experience that could be meaningless, but beyond the human experience, they can have meaning. You know, there was a time where I was like, okay, if I am to have an analysis, like this is what I was trying to get to. To be honest, really, I was thinking about like, what am I going to talk about today? And I was just looking at people. I was in my car waiting at a light, and I was just looking at people, and I'm like, what is going on? How can a being know it's a body and still think it's just a body? It's mind-blowing to me. Do you understand? It's like, I'm telling you, more fascinating, more than I have learned from all the teachers in my educational system. I have learned from people. Just watching every day. From a person's eyes, you can get a sense of how they're experiencing their inner realms. You might not know this. I'm like, think of it this way. I've practiced my inner realms to such a degree I can know that based on a person's eyes, I can know if they're looking into something in their inner realms or they're looking in the outer realms. Okay? And something very fascinating, something that every human being has to work on, is to be comfortable looking at the world. Have you asked yourself if you're comfortable seeing the world, right? There was a time where there was someone I was fond of, right? And a part of me wanted to get close to them, and then it just didn't happen. And then I wondered why. Then I realized I wasn't even comfortable holding eye contact with that person. Do you see what I'm saying? Oh man. So think of it this way. Before a part of the world separated from the physical world, a physical part of the world separated from the physical part of the world, from the whole physical world, from the whole non-physical world, call it space, okay, there came a separation of space. So this means that we are actually multi-bodied. It could be that the gravest error, it's not that like we're physical or non-physical, right? It's not, I'm not saying like, yo, you know, scientists believe in magic, you know, it's like even though everything seems to have magically appeared out of nowhere, but what I'm saying is that most beings on this world, we have young souls, we have old souls, and we have beings which are poetically beyond souls. I'm going to create that term. You know, we're going to call them the beyond soulists. So let me tell you what it means. It means that some beings are in this world for a physical experience. You look at squirrels, you look at animals, these are not creatures that are in the environment to solve complex problems. They're here to solve the problems of their design. Most creatures are just occupied with what they are. Most beings, most entities, not just even limited to Earth, right? Most beings anywhere that are conscious are occupied with themselves. Consciousness is a hilarious self-obsession to a point that you realize the self that you're obsessed with isn't interconnected as a singular event with everything that's happening. Do you understand? It's so difficult to be an individual when everything is happening at the same time. Everything is present. You see, the presence of reality makes our analysis of its temporal nature kind of meaning. So what that means is there's something here that is noticing change, and it's running, and because its truth is conditional to a certain idea or condition, the moment it changes, it's like, shit, I need a new truth. Oh man, let me go find a new enlightened guru. Let me go find a new enlightened guy. You know, oh my God, who else is gonna, you know, say exactly what I want to hear? But you don't realize you are here once in this format. That's the crazy thing. It's as if like, you know, there's somebody like, okay, let me tell you something incredible. This is one of the coolest stories that, you know, relates to a religious idea that I've heard. I heard this story when I was really young. Somebody said it. There was this guy back in the day, you know, in the 6th century or something. I don't know, the 7th century or something like that. Okay, there was this village, like imagine in the desert or somewhere, and there's these bunch of snake oil salesmen. And if people don't know who snake oil salesmen are, pretty much they were like these. It's the metaphors, like they were these guys who would piss in like jars and sell it as like product to people. The story goes that there's these two, you know, dishonest snake oil salesmen, and they realize everybody has believed in heaven and the idea of the afterlife. And so in this Muslim village, they realize the people are just in a sort of loop of a pattern of living. So that these merchant snake oil salesmen, they're like, okay, people don't have enough confidence and critical thinking in this town to question what we're doing, so let's go do it quickly, right? And so these two snake oil salesmen, they go there, right? And so they set up a shop, and they're like, hey everybody gather around. And people in the market gather around. And let's say it's just a town, okay, just some village, you know, different kinds of people in the village. So people gather around, and then the snake oil salesmen begin their ad campaign. You know, they begin their marketing fund. They're like, hey everybody, we're selling real estate in heaven. And we can sell real estate in heaven, and we have a piece of paper that allows us, you know, and everything is allowed, and we're selling real estate in heaven, and give us all your money and life savings, and we'll give you a house in heaven, right? And as this is happening, there are people there, and they're like, okay, yo man, this is like 1/3 of my life savings. Why not? I'll give it a try, right? You know, and so the gullible people of the village are all lining up to go and buy a house in heaven from these guys. And they're standing there with these fake papers. They're like, oh, good job, congratulations, sir, see you in heaven, you're gonna have an apartment, you're gonna have a nice balcony, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and people are just buying it. Let me tell you something about deception, guys. Deception is all about attention. It's all about attention control. So it's so easy to tell someone you're doing something else and do something else, right? But dishonesty backfires because you're creating so many simulations of yourself you can't control at one time. So dishonesty is unnecessary. Be honest and you'll get to at least experience your karma, your life, who you were. That's the power of honesty. It's not be honest and some angel's gonna be like, good boy, you're gonna go to heaven. No, you're being honest to see what you are. You have entered this world to meet yourself for the first time. It's not only others that are holy. Okay, it's not just holy people and enlightened people are outside of you. One day you're going to realize everything enlightening and divine you've seen out of this world is within you. And when you realize that, you'll laugh. Your past will cry, your memories will cry, but your future will laugh. Because a freedom that is instantaneous could have always been there. Do you know what I thought? I thought that there's something weird about the karma of creatures in this world. If you want something, if you chase the butterfly, as the saying goes, you're a step back, right? You never catch the butterfly. And I was like, WTF, I keep trying to be a step ahead and I'm always behind and it never works out. Then I thought, how do I fix this problem? And people are gonna laugh at my solution. My solution was simply this, okay? Oh man. My solution was, if I try to be one step ahead and I'm always a step behind, I'm gonna try to be as far steps ahead as I can, and my ultimate failure is going to be the greatest victory I've ever had so far. Do you understand what I'm saying? That means people are trying to be enlightened so these poor souls never get enlightened. But imagine you were enlightened and you were thinking, what are you going to do after your enlightenment? Think about not like after. Do you know what I'm saying? Imagine everybody on the planet is enlightened. What are you going to do now, son? Like... So I was like, yo, if I try to attain, just run after, because this life, let me tell you what it is. Let me tell you how your personality gets shaped in this world. All those people who think, like when I was younger, I didn't think I have a personality. I didn't think I was even an interest. I didn't even think I was like, do you know what I mean? I didn't trust the person that I was, or I was trying to be. That was the issue of my youth. But then after some point you realize mortality and you relax, because you see that it's not about everybody competing in this vibe of perfection and then everybody dies and gets dismissed. You gotta have a critical thinking that surpasses your own beliefs on your thinking. So that this means that what we need on this planet is not just people who are giving answers to everything. It's like, yeah, I got an answer, right? And guys, I'll finish that story, but I'll say this. What this world needs and what will get the greatest contributions. Right now, the culture is kind of designed where somebody gives an answer, everybody's like, yo, worship this guy, right? But when somebody civilized and in an advanced civilization, those people answers close worlds. Questions open them up. So if there were 2 awards given to 2 individuals, one of them had discovered a great answer, and one of them had discovered the great question. The guy who discovers the question deserves the greater award. Because answers are acceptances. Acceptances are nouns. Life is a verb. You will suffer if you treat it as a noun. You will suffer if you think it's just a nice place. You will suffer if you think it's just a bad place. But if you treat this world like how you treat a new person you see, as if they are unknown, you don't know what is behind their eyes, you don't know who they are, you don't know how they think, right? There was a time where I would sit down and in my mind try to fathom and simulate different moments in history. Okay, and I tried to simulate myself as if I could imagine a hypothetical past life in medieval times. Imagine I was like this, some sort of knight of a kingdom or something, or I was like, or I was like somebody guarding the king or something, in medieval times, right? So my mind took me back as if, how would I walk? What weapon would I hold? What voice would what tone of voice? What intensity? What way should I? And I'm starting to realize, like, it's not about an individual. We're not in a world of an individual. The individual is the byproduct of an unknown of something unknown going on. Anyways, so in this town where these snake oil salesmen are selling proper, real, heavenly real estate, okay, there's this kid, there's this guy, there's this young man, and this young man suddenly sees, like, only God can give you what you deserve. Like so for example, in Islam, there's a saying that, like, nobody can come and tell you you're a good Muslim or a bad Muslim, because the idea is only God knows what's in your heart. Other human beings cannot see what's in your heart. They may even think they can, sometimes, like some people can, but it doesn't mean they can fully see. They can see parts of your heart, right? There was a time where, this might sound very strange for people, but I'm sharing something personal about myself. I pray, and there was some years, I think it was for a couple years, I was just praying for God to unseal my heart. Because I had noticed my intellectual pursuit was in some sense dehumanizing me a little. And more than we need an intellectual ability on this planet, we actually need an acknowledgement of a decency presence in this species. Do you understand? This is not an analytical process we're in only. It's not something that can have reason only. Because I was thinking about reason, then I was like, what's the reason for reason? And then boom, it was like a glitch. It was like an error in the worldview, right? And that's the beautiful thing. Just like there's glitches in a video game that make you suddenly see, like, okay, this video game is not the only thing that's there. Something's like glitching in the system, right? So to me, the moment you see a glitch in a system, you're getting a sense that something is not synchronized in the moment. Something is revealing itself, okay? When I was saying there's old souls and young souls, I'll give you hilarious. The young soul has come here for a material attainment. That's like level 1, imagine. The old soul has attained infinite lifetimes materialism, different types of lives, different types of materialistic senses of possession. That means, what's fascinating about Buddhism and yoga? Not just this idea that there's past lives, and the person has been living as different beings in different lives, right? But just this idea that in each potential past life, there was a soul possessing the moment. Do you understand? What is happening is this weird, invisible, possessing archiving system, right? More than it's just a human beings, in a world where God's like, be a good boy, right? It's more than that. It seems like the cosmos is behaving in a way that we that have emerged out of it, it's incomplete. And this is the bizarre thing about life, right? Because way before Mandelbrot, this mathematician, spoke about fractals, right? And Plato said, as above, so below. And religion said, in some sense, you're made in the image of the creator or whatnot. So it's this weird thing where the small should technically have the design of the big thing, right? Do you understand? That means it's like, we are like, this might sound This might be one of the most like humorous things and playful things I've said, but it's like we're mini gods behind our eyes. We're getting a mini god experience. I've never used this term before, mini god, but I guess it's something. I guess it's being added to the language archives of the species. Oh my God! Somebody in the chat section said tiny G's. Oh my God. It's like, yo, look at these adorable mini gods, like miniature gods. Oh my God, adorable miniature gods. Wow. If they made an action figure hero set of Greek mythology, that would be incredible. Oh man. Anyways, there's so much more to say right now. I gotta just... So where am I going with this? I'm saying in the middle of our human life, something non-human could be happening, and our approach to understanding that is to, in some sense, try to see it's a problem the future species has to solve. Pretty much what's going to happen is that we're going to have a rise of philosophy right now. People think it's dead, right? Or I don't know, they think philosophy is like a sleep. It's dead, but let me tell you, philosophy is like a sleeping giant. People should go see why Plato spoke about the philosopher king. It means that the most advanced state is a state of total responsibility for the kingdom of your experience. You see, let me say it this way, actually. You right now, I don't want to give you an ego so that you think you're like, oh my God, you're the king of the world. But let me tell you, I want to say this, okay? Imagine existence is a kingdom. Imagine how would I say this? I wanted to use the metaphor of how like consciousness is sitting on the throne of the mind and the experience of existence is its kingdom. I wanted to use that metaphor. But really, to be honest, I'm a person who I won't say I'm a person who my true view is that truth is beyond language. So if somebody comes and says, Mr. Within, is God, is divinity a concept? I would say no. People may think what I'm doing here, like all these talks I'm giving, they may think these are spiritual talks, right? But in reality, the spiritual doesn't talk. The spirit doesn't need to talk. It shapes our aligned orbit around it. Consciousness doesn't orbit around the shape. It can choose to. I sometimes get visions of the future generations, what kind of human beings are going to be born, and I get blissed out. Because there's going to be such incredible problem solvers and such incredible teams, right? Because the first thing I asked, like, think of it this way, I had this poetic experience where I had this inner, playful moment of, it was more like a film, but I'm going to explain it to you like a dialogue. Like I saw a film in my mind, but I'm going to tell you as if it was a dialogue. It was as if I'm someone who, I don't know. I mean, I think AI in the future is going to have the capacity in the future to completely check how many people in the year 2023 are talking about the advanced civilization, right? I looked up, I did a bit of research, and I realized it's the Kardashev scale. Kardashev was a top G. He's the top G, actually. It's like, Andrew Tate should go and, interview Kardashev's grandchildren. Anyways, guys, what I'm trying to say is that as someone who's an early bird and a pine who is an early bird to sharing the idea of the advanced civilization. This is going to sound very strange, but the most advanced beings are not beings. The most advanced state of this world is an awareness of its totality. Okay, let me reorganize my attention here. So I'm here to give a commentary on the afterlife. In order to know what's afterlife, we need to know what's life, but life is so big and unknown and dynamic that we can't know it as a noun. So the idea has to be, in order for the human consciousness to prepare for the afterlife, it has to experience itself as an unconditional unknown verb. And then it will not have a fear of the afterlife, because the afterlife is an entrance into the unknown. So the way this world is working is, in some sense, you arrive from the unknown. Existentially, you're born from the unknown, and it's like that, comforting idea where somebody says, why are we afraid of non-existence? We have not existed way longer than we have existed. And I was like, yeah, I have been non-existing since the end of time, right? And just like since 1991, I've been existing, right? So non-existence is like, I have way more experience non-existing as a physical entity than existing. If consciousness, if mind-body dualism of Descartes holds. Every mind generates what its vision gives it. Okay? I'm sitting here as someone trying to talk about the afterlife. But in reality, if life does not end, like, think about it. Imagine there are two beings on this world. Imagine you are a psychologist. Imagine in the future you're a student of psychology and there are two psychologists. There's a human psychologist, a mortal psychologist, and then there's an immortal psychologist. And imagine you had to choose which student you wanted to be of, the apprentice of who you wanted to be, the mentee, who you wanted to be your mentor. Do you want an immortal psychologist or a mortal psychologist? And if that kid was street smart, if the student was street smart, he'd learn from both. Or if the kid was smart, he'd go to first the temporary psychologist. I mean, depends on if the kid is immortal or not. Let's say the kid is not immortal. The kid would learn from both if he's smart. Or he would introduce the two psychologists together. That's the right answer. But I would say something in this sense, that if you were to learn from an immortal being is a fearless entity. It's a honey badger. Okay, honey badgers don't have fear. I don't know, they don't have like there's something in their genetics that it's like their brain doesn't generate fear. Okay, and so an immortal being is like that. It's a being that is not afraid of anything. Why? Because it doesn't go anywhere if anything happens. So you see, you right now are allowing the changing world in front of your eyes to possess how you are shaped behind your eyes. But once you realize that you have not just come to meet the world has come to meet your consciousness, that you are a window. They say the eyes are the window of the soul. And if the soul is looking through the eyes and seeing the earth, guess what? The whole cosmos has come to this window to see who's on the other side. All worlds wait for us. Because why else are we walking here? Where is it going? So many ideas, so many ideological systems. Think of how many human brains, how many lightning storms in jars are like working to, in some sense, push the efforts of the human experience, right? I don't know, there was something, whether it was the movie like Gladiator or Lord of the Rings, I don't know, it was one of the most beautiful sight where it's like the march of an army, Now imagine the army is no longer marching for a physical war for the first time. A non-physical march towards the end of time. A fearless species where the whole cosmos learned from. There was a time where I wondered. I didn't even finish the thing I was saying. I had a poetic dialogue with the logos, and I was pretty much like, yo, how's this advanced civilization gonna happen? And one word came, and the word was teams. Teams. That's it. It's not gonna be just a hero. It's not just going to be one great idea. It's not just going to be one ideological system, but it's going to be all ideological systems working together. And imagine in the future, using advanced super intelligent computers and AI, we turn and convert the religious books into endless preaching androids. What that means is, in the future, there's no longer going to be human beings talking about truth, because they will be too busy being it. When it came to fighting, so imagine, I was telling you, if I was trying to imagine myself in a medieval time, and then I thought back in the day, right, if I had to choose like the weapons I would carry, right, and I would think it would be like a sword, just like a regular sword, and a small dagger, or like a smaller sword, kind of like a samurai style approach. Why? Because the smaller sword it weighs less, so it's there for quick attacks, and the long sword there is for your defense and just heavy attack purposes. So if a person, for example, let's say they master a left-hand jab, pretty much I'm saying, okay, anyways. It's like, Mr.Within, stop talking about your hypothetical past life possibilities and just get back to the talk, I don't know what it is, but there's a bunch of intelligent creatures here. They have no idea what's going on. We were freaking out, and now we've calmed down, and we got to use our calmness for something. And you know what I realized? Let me tell you something. A technique I don't know how I developed it, but it's just something I do. Anytime I'm in a situation where I have to go through something, or have to do something I don't like, or I dislike, or I don't want to, but I have to. You understand? That's when I transport myself in my inner realms, and I start living ahead, right? So I'll give you an example. So imagine you're like waiting at, like, I don't know, the bank, or imagine one day you're waiting at a bank in Switzerland. And so in your mind, you're going to be, in some sense, like, okay, I gotta wait here an hour, right? And so you sit there on the let's say the couch or whatever, right? And you close your eyes, and in your mind you fast forward as if what's going to happen in the next hour, and then you go ahead of 1 hour ahead in your mind and start thinking what's the next problem you're going to solve. Pretty much that's what life is, by the way, right? It's just an endless spectrum of problem solving, and people are either relying on their own power to solve these problems, or they're relying on powers outside of them. And for me, because I wanted an advanced civilization, an advanced humanity, I was like, the power has to come from within them. Do you understand? That means I'm one of those people that even if there's like if I see a holy guru in front of me, right, and the holy guru, everybody's worshiping that holy guru, do you know? To me, it would be as if like, yo, bro, it's like if you want it, like if you want to be a clown, the circus is hiring. Do you know? Like. When I say the next non-place, I am trying to take this species. I am trying to pilot the human species, or I shouldn't say I. Mr. Within is trying to pilot the human species to a point where it can pilot itself. And that's the task of all those people alive in 2023 who are, in some sense, whether they know it or not, their life force is destined to serve the advanced civilization. You know, there was a time where I was like, yo, there's so much space in the world. Why are human beings all packed in cities and thinking there's overcrowded and overpopulation? Like, it's so freaking hilarious. The planet is so big, right? And we just haven't made it all inhabitable. And we're like, yo, we gotta go somewhere else. There isn't enough room. Do you understand? This species gets convinced by its own eyes faster than it has wondered about what its eyes are, you know. The next non-place means, I mean, I don't know if this can be considered transcendence and enlightenment, but I've reached a playful moment where I was like, I am bored with existence. I'm not bored with all the infinite types of new and random experiences a person can have in existence. I am just looking at it, and once you understand something, you don't fear it. You see, anytime you fear anything, know that you're not understanding something about the situation. If you're about to be nervous on, like, this is something I had, like, okay, the first time I ever gave a public microphone talk, people can go see it. It's like video episode 438, MW2032. But I remember that a part of me felt nervous, but a part of me felt as if I have been waiting. I have been waiting, and now the world is calling me. Oh, what great human beings will arrive. You know, the advanced communicators will become the closest thing. You know, it's as if, like, let me tell you, I think the genius of what I've done with this idea of like the pilots of consciousness and the advanced communicator is that I have completely opened a new archetypal shop, in some sense, of trying to framework humanity from a landscape and context where there's angels, demons, heaven and hell, to that this whole world and the species, it's like an airplane. We're inside not an airplane, we're inside a plane of existence where there's air we can breathe, you know. So we are theoretically in technically in an airplane, but we're in a plane where there's air. Okay, so what I'm saying poetically is that the pilots of consciousness are those beings, those human beings, those members of the species that have come here to look at outside of the plane of existence. Out there, their responsibility is to direct, to now pilot the plane. But then we have the advanced communicators, and the advanced communicators are like the cabin crew. okay, of the airplane, and of the passengers are all the new human beings entering the system, and the advanced communicators are going to all the passengers, and they're like, hello ma'am, hello sir, do you want apple juice or orange juice, and constantly liberating individuals who are trapped in, let's say, primitive dualistic structures and plots of their own mind. You see that there's this strange thing where it's like, imagine you're sitting on a chair and freedom is like getting up from the chair, and imagine there's somebody standing in front of you and you're like, yo, unknown divine force, save me, help me, somebody please, I'm dying sitting on this chair, somebody come and like hold my hand, somebody come and throw me, take me off this chair, somebody come and save me. And then this person, and imagine the savior is standing in front of this person sitting under a chair and being like, hey man, before asking the savior for help, can you just double check and see if you can save yourself or not? And the person's like, yo, I don't have confidence though, I don't believe in myself, when I was a child people told me I can't, and then the person's like, it's fine, who cares, just come to the present and look at the moment anew, as if you're a new being. And the person's like, okay, and the person realizes they're on a chair, and they're like, okay, the problem is I'm sitting on a chair, and I don't know how to get up from the chair, so let me first try to look at what sitting on a chair means. And the person thinks about, okay, in order to sit on a chair, that means there was a time I wasn't sitting on the chair. So this means I have the ability to get off the chair, and then the guy just gets off the chair, and the savior is just slow hand clapping. Do you see? And this is the brilliance of a divine inventor, that its invention was as divine as itself. That's the beauty of art. That's the beauty of like these lectures. At least for me, they are me, but not really. So, the viewers can look at the notepad. So, as the human species cultivates an incredible discriminatory power, by realizing it really has two options. People are going to think like, there's so many things you can do in this life, sure, but when it comes for consciousness is like this unknown viewer of a known landscape, of a known film. Okay, so I'm just this human being that wants to see what the most advanced species of what the most advanced state of our species is. That's my whole thing, guys. In all these talks, I am fascinated by how the human position is in some sense not just being the reception of reality, but also it plays a hand in how it interprets the divine. So it's like, imagine like an angel gives you a donut, and then you as a human take the donut, and in some sense after you've taken the donut, it's true, you have truth, but you haven't absorbed the truth. You haven't understood the truth. Because the truth is the abidance by what certain sages, or how Sri Ramana Maharshi said, the truth is so simple. It's just about remembering your original state. I think it was something in these lines. So what the original state means, that there is a way energy and attention are being before their effect has a say on what the causal position is. So we have this attitude that we use the past to explain the present, but if we use the past to explain the beginning, it's impossible. So this is the bizarre framework of cause and effect not being able to fit in the trio of time. Do you understand? That means I feel a lot of human suffering could have been because we're misusing technologies that we can't discriminate if they are self-created or if they are world movements. The next non-place means that okay, here, let me tell you the approach. So if the viewers look at the screen, so this is the idea. In Vedic times, there was this idea of Mahasamadhi. Mahasamadhi, okay? Mahasamadhi, okay? And the idea of of a person's title called Mahatma, okay? And then we have the idea of the Atma, which means individual soul. And then we have the idea of Para Brahman. Para Brahman. And so Para Brahman is the idea of the collective soul. I'll get to this. But the collective soul is not a soul. It's an eternal, uncaused, therefore unbeing being. Unbeing being. Unbeing, guys, let's add that to the lexicon. So to continue, as we hear the Vajra Guru Padmasambhava mantra. So the Para Brahman is the collective soul. So Mahasamadhi is the idea that an Atma realized the Para Brahman nature before is the idea that the Atma realized the Parabrahma's nature before dying, and in the outer realms this translated as the soul consciously leaving the body. That was the idea. So Mahasamadhi is like a being that has realized the truth of reality to such a degree that there is no such thing as death. That means imagine a being that has lived so excellently that death doesn't need to come and take the person away. The person already knows when they need to leave, right? Or they begin to notice something about the moment, and then these are like transcendental universals. So what it means is that when you see a transcendental universal, either you're hallucinating, like you're on a psychedelic trip, or excuse me, either you're on a psychedelic trip, either you're having a divine realization, either you're dying, or you're being teleported. You see, there are certain states that it's all about preparation. You see, this is what I've noticed as a kind of smart attitude, where you use what you have as preparation for the next thing. So there's some people who just enjoy what they have, and there's some people who they want to enjoy, but they ask themselves what magnitude, what size of enjoyment they want. And the greater the size, the more you got to sacrifice the short-term joy, right? It depends on if you want short-term joy or long-term joy, pretty much. If you want long-term joy, I find that it's like the ability, they say just in evolution, the creature had to adapt. So the idea is like you don't take yourself so seriously, so you can learn from different senses of yourself in different moments. You see, everything is your mind's action. You know, if you treated your mind like a child, like your child, you wouldn't judge its actions. You would just be like, oh, look at something cute it's doing. You know? Sorry, guys. I'm literally inhaling and exhaling at the same time. You know, the cool thing about being alive is that you get to see what this is and what you are and all the ways you have created relationships to the moment. You know, if somebody says Mr. Within, you seem to have, like, you know, looked into mysticism. So what's your conclusion? The conclusion is that truth was in the room before we were. And this is why, out of distrust and trust, which are the old school sages would say these are the two options, it's the wise trust the world. I have to trust the moment in order to continue into the moment. Advancement without trust is, I don't know what that is. You know, advancement without trust could lead to letting go too soon, you know. So anyways, this idea of Mahasamadhi. So here, check this out. There is, let's consider 3 dimensions. The visible dimension, so the visible dimension is biological objective body, observable and tangible world. An invisible dimension is a subjective mind or self. And then this is observable but not tangible. So that's the cool thing about imagination. You can see stuff but you can't touch stuff. You know how many times I've tried to, like, you know, touch the Ferraris I've imagined, you know? It's like, yo man, it's so close. It's like, it's so close, but yet so far. So, a visible dimension, objective body, observable and tangible world. An invisible dimension, inconceivable dimension. This is very interesting. This is very bizarre because this is like suddenly realizing you have been watching not just your body change throughout the years and throughout life when you move, throughout the day when you move, but you have also been watching your thoughts come and go and change, right? So what has been watching the changing of our object and of our objective and subjective component, our objective and subjective self. So this is the unknown witnessing presence of how invisible subjects when I say invisible, they're invisible to the outer realms. It doesn't mean they don't have design. So it could. So when I say invisible here, I'm also saying intangible. How an invisible subject and visible object are changing through an instantaneous, changeless observer. So think of it this way, based on the dimensions we've seen to what we are as a being, we have considered those dimensions each. So what it means is like, imagine truth is a cake. We've cut it up into pieces, and then we've made each piece like acting as if each piece is its own cake, like it's a full cake. Do you understand? It's like how the poet Rumi says truth is like how there was one mirror and it's shattered into pieces, but each piece is reflecting everything all the time. It's like we're empowered by the whole thing to not be the whole thing. It's like the whole cosmos is trying very hard to keep us here. Because why? Because it has brought us here. That's like the greatest effort to keeping us here, you know? Man, I'm trying to find new songs to play. Somebody send me music. Okay, there we go. Oh my god, a song that is like the perfect soundtrack to like hope, you know, rekindling the anguish of the soul, you know. This is one of my favorite songs, guys, by the way. So let's see where we can go from here. I have to separate myself from my past and just breathe as a simple being in the present. And from this simple present, wonder about how the past. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, imagine the past was still alive, right? And the present was alive, and we didn't know what the future was going to be, right? And so we're there in the present, and we're like, yo, if we live for the past lived for the future. Isn't that hilarious? The past generations, they lived so we can be who we are, and we right now in the present are living in accordance to them in the past so they can be who they are. Do you understand? That means religion is another way of saying like the death of the body is not the death of the soul. So there is no death. Do you see, even the idea of heaven and hell, there is no concept of non-existence. God doesn't say you stop existing. You exist, the condition of your existence changes. So religion is acknowledging you not as just a human, as an endless being. But it's like the quality of eternity you want to be. So imagine a being that's suffering, that's low quality eternalism, low resolution eternalism. Do you know? A being that is in some sense, let's say, abiding by the universal rhythms or hearing the music of the spheres. That is like a high resolution. So, eternal. So these are the way I consider it, because to me these have a value. Now the inconceivable dimension, this translates, I'll write it in a box here, as presence, okay? So this is your presence, and it's, here, I'll write it here, unknown presence. The invisible dimension is known. Okay, that means it's not just bizarre how we can notice the visible is there
how you're like a visible being and you notice something invisible, like imagine a force field or something. But what's fascinating is you need the invisible to be visible before being the visible to notice the invisible. So do you understand? We need abstraction to solidify reality, and then reality can have the, audacity to be like, imagination ain't real, even though I need it to exist, like in order to know my realism. Do you understand? We have been judging something that actually is so interconnected and vast that what have we been judging? So the invisible dimension, of course, and guys, my attitude is I reached this sort of intellectual, like imagine I was intellectually trying to solve like a mystical problem, and then I reached a point where I just realized the limitations of my being, and that's when the idea of God and faith in the inconceivable, like there's some people who pray and they go there and they act like a robot, and then there's some people who when they step on the prayer mat, they forget literally all the ideas in their mind, all their desires, all their opinions, just for a second, as if they're blown away, because they are in the presence of that which is moving all of it. Do you understand the command? That means it's like some person sees an old religious person praying and being like, yo, what a sweet old person, but that person, if you looked at it metaphysically, is literally like a general honoring the chain of command. Your change, and the chain of command is once you are honest with your limitations, then the limitless will have a relationship with you. But if you act like your limitations are limitless, you try to be eternal even though a part of you knows that if you were eternal, you didn't need to act to be. If you were enlightened, you didn't need to act to be. An enlightened being is not trying to be enlightened. A human being, why are human beings trying to be enlightened, and why aren't human beings trying to be human beings? Right? And somebody's going to be like, Mr.Within, because I am a human being. Why do I need to be a human being? Why do I need to try to be a human being? I am a human being. And I'll be like, exactly. So if you're an enlightened being, why do you need to try to be enlightened? Why is that idea necessary? It's about an unknown attention in an unknown world. And the rest is like a known symphony. And we're trying to figure out who the conductor is, the orchestrator is. Okay, so let me see. So the reason I'm sharing these three dimensions is because I'm somebody talking about the afterlife, and I have to right now try to map this out and try to say, okay, what is the structure, how does the idea and the structure of like the concept of the afterlife relate? So this is why it's needed to say these three things. So the next thing here is I'm going to call these guys, just give them VD, this is ID, and this is ICD, okay? Inconceivable dimension. So we have VD, ID, and ICD, okay? These are just acronyms I'm gonna use for now. So now, see, we have the challenge is to explain the context of the afterlife Hold on, guys. Let me gather my thoughts. Imagine I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Thoughts, gather around. I'm trying to give a podcast here. Thoughts. Where are my thoughts? Goddamn. No, I'm joking. You know how many times I've had a thought I've wanted to share, and right before I could say the thought like a bird just got like startled and flew away, you know? So anyways, the idea is I'm talking about the afterlife, okay? I'm trying to find good music, and I hope this is okay. This might be, yeah. Let's go with this. No, not too much, too heavy. There we go. This is good. I haven't heard this song, I think, for over a year or something. Right. So. What I'm trying to do is I'm some guy in a world trying to talk about the afterlife. So we got to look at what the afterlife means. Okay, so the challenge is, so it's not a challenge, pretty much the idea is, what is the afterlife? In order to answer this question, we need to know, we need to ask, what is life? Now, some challenges arise. So, so the next question would be, how can life know what is life? This is the question. And I think, wow, what an incredible sentence. Wow. This is I think I just sculpted a masterpiece, guys. How can life know what is life, and both of them having the same capital L? I'm actually thinking, like, how can a living being know what life is? So in order to know what life is, we are considering first that we don't know it. Okay? Now, there are three ways we can know it. We can know life. We can know life through VD. ID, ICD, OCD, holy shit, ICD. It's like, what's this laptop trying to say? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So we have, so we can know life through these three dimensions, through these three, we can know, we can consider and know life through these three dimensions. So the VD would be, that means we're like, what does life mean? What does life mean in the visible dimension? That's an incredible question we need to answer. And then, what does life mean in the invisible dimension? This is gonna be a long one, man. Okay, what does life mean in the inconceivable dimension? My God. You know what, it's like, I think if like an old British lady who was drinking tea heard the term inconceivable dimension, she would pause for a second and just for a second look out the window. You know? You know, this is the strange thing where I'll never know if, you know, the Queen of England ever heard a Mr.Within talk or not. You know, I'll never know that. So what does life mean in the inconceivable dimension? Anyways, let's keep going. What does life mean in the inconceivable dimension? So let's start with the visible. So what does life mean in the visible dimension? An evolutionary animal has awakened through an artificial subjective process to how it is an animal in an unknown endless world. That's really the value of consciousness. Consciousness means the being is ready to know how big the world is. Any being who's in a conscious reality, you're pretty much here to appreciate and unlearn. Not, I don't want to say learn, but sure, like learn too, but to appreciate and directly experience the excellence of eternalism, right? So it's kind of like beings reincarnate because they don't know what anything else, or they forget. Do you understand? And forgetfulness is even bizarre, right? How can an eternal being forget itself, right? Like there was this Vedic idea of like, you know, like in the Greek view, in Greek mythology, it's the battle of the Titans and the gods. In Vedic mythology, it's the Asuras and the Devas, and it's the idea of immortal physical beings, immortal shapes, fighting with eternal space. And the way immortal shapes managed to fight with eternal space was to make eternal space forget that it's not a shape. You're free beyond your perception, because your perception needs a freedom to exist. So what does life mean in the visible dimension? An evolutionary animal is awakened through an artificial subjective process to how it is an animal in an unknown endless world. Okay? How it's a temporary entity in an unknown endless world. And unconsciously and moving and unconsciously moved. That means the world was moving the creature at first, and then the creature began to move itself, but it didn't realize it was moving itself. Then it awakened through some sort of self-awareness, and then that self-awareness allowed it to create a subjectivity in reality. You know, some people were like, yo, some atheists so easily say that our ancestors were like, yo, they were superstitious in the past, they were believing in hocus pocus. And it's so easily you say that in a time where people didn't know what reality was. There was no science, there was nothing, and stories were the only, in some sense, like lanterns in the darkness of the forest of the world. And people went from town to town seeking the new story, seeking a new context. And it's as if the moment we became a concept that could notice itself, we were destined in an infinite romance with our world. It's like a romance of a discoverer with the world, an explorer with the unknown. The unknown has a beauty which actually shifts the context of death. That means it's like, imagine there's a person, they're like, oh my God, it's gonna end. And then at some point, they just realize, wait a minute, I don't know who I am. Imagine somebody is like, there's this, let's say, from a theological context, okay, let's say somebody went to the pearly, a philosopher died and went to heaven at the pearly gates. And then the voice said, why should I let you in? You didn't make up your mind, right? And the philosopher says, hey man, you want to judge me, right? Like, the reason I'm standing in front of these pearly gates is because you want to know how to judge me, right? But how can you judge me when in my lifetime I didn't know who I was? So if I did something good or wrong, God created me in a way where I didn't know who I am. Like, at its core, I can't know. It's like the soul is the mystery. And then the angel at the pearly gates, it's like, okay, let me check with management. And the voice comes back and says, okay, you didn't know then. What about now? And the philosopher takes a moment at the pearly gates of heaven. And he says, do you have a notebook and a pen in heaven? Oh man. Sorry guys, I'm being playful. This stuff. The idea of heaven is beautiful, but there's some things beyond man's will. And some people think spirituality means just getting power and using that power to get what you want, but that's such a low resolution way to live. Ritualism, that's Buddha. But if to me, I understand there's human behavior is kind of ritualistic, like drinking water, eating food, ritualistic, hygiene, ritualistic. All of these are ritualistic processes, right? Even communication or something, or even to be human is kind of we got to realize we're a rhythmic cyclical entity at the same time as we think we're like a noun as a noun-like character in a story, verb-like story. So that's the visible dimension. Okay, in the visible dimension, a temporary object is having a mysterious subjective experience before it dies or enters the unknown's door. That's the visible dimension. We come to the invisible dimension. What does life mean in the invisible dimension? This is so incredible. Why? Because it's asking the question, who are you when you close your eyes? You see, there's one thing where we're using the geometry of our visual biological senses, but something I realized, let me tell you something, right? I have this very intelligent and atheistic communist aunt. And she knows I'm into meditation and Zen and all of this, right? And so we were having a conversation about the soul, right? And it was she's like, what are you saying? What is the soul in all of this, right? And I was telling her, can you close your eyes for a second? And she closes her eyes, and I'm like, can you visualize an apple? And she visualizes the apple. And then I told her, first of all, there's no light entering your eyes and you're still seeing something. And the one that is seeing that apple is the soul. And she just paused. It was for a second, she just paused. She opened her eyes and she paused. And then she was like, no, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? It was and that was the thing, right? That was my, at the time, that was my experience of it, By the way, guys, if you are a regular listener of this YouTube channel, like, you should, like, 100% own, like, go buy a sketchbook, not like a notebook with lines, specifically a sketchbook, right? And you should be using the sketchbook as a mirror of your mind. You don't know how many times, like, all the communication, like, a huge, way before I gave the Mr. Within talks, people don't know how much I wrote. Like, that's what happens when you're a shy kid. Do you know? It's as if, like, it's like you're looking for outlets of expression, right? And so writing is very fascinating, because writing is an outlet of expression where it's kind of like the earliest form of inventing. If somebody says, what was the first invention, right? Somebody would say a wheel. But I would say no, the first invention was a symbol. A subjective symbol was the first invention. A subject. Or just a symbol. Imagine drawing just a line on a piece of paper. Or even a drop of ink on a piece of paper, and that's like the first invention. If that somebody was like, yo, that's a period, that means something. And let me tell you even something. The earliest invention of man, one of the earliest artists, like, if somebody was like, yo, who's the earliest artist on this planet? This next level, way ahead of his time being, okay, this caveman being who put his hand on a wall and then sprayed the wall with pigment, with this powdered pigment. Can you imagine a caveman putting his hand on a wall and then with his other hand just splashing pigment on the wall and taking off and seeing his hand print on the wall? That guy was like the freaking genius of the caveman. Do you understand? That's the first artist, right? But that's another poetic way of saying the first invention of primitive man was art. And a symbol is art. A drop of ink on a page is art. So art is the first invention of man. So, final comments. Oh, no, actually, okay, let me write something here. What does life mean in the invisible dimension? This is Mr. Within. This is Mr. Within. This is my observation so far, okay? And guys, when I use Mr. Within is like an online alias I'm using for this Mr. Within project, but at the same Mr. Within's gift project. But at the same time, it's a cyber mask. That's what I'm trying to tell you. But it's a cyber mask that's pointing to how the experience of outer life is an inner event. So what does life mean in the invisible dimension? My observations of it are so far that it's like an unknown observer of so let's say visible dimension can be said to be a known observer of shape. Oh, I got it. Perfect. A shaped observer of shapes in a shaped world. Jesus Christ. And then we come here and we write a shapeless observer of shapes in a shapeless world. That's what the imagination is. That's the pitch black abyss where when you visualize like an apple pie in your mind, right? If it's hovering in the middle of nowhere, that nowhere is a shapeless world. It's like the limbo of the dimensions. It's literally like a bridging dimension. It's a bridge. So it's fair to say that the inner realms are acting as a bridge between two dimensions as well. You know, we can have this idea. So visible dimension, you're a shaped observer of a shapes of a shaped world. And then you're a shapeless observer of of shapes in a shapeless world. And then what does life mean in the inconceivable dimension? It's another way of saying the shapeless observer realizes it is noticing the shapes. It is noticing, it is observing the shapes from an inconceivable world. Oh, the shapeless observer realizes it is observing. Oh my God. There we go. The shapeless observer realizes it is observing the shapes from and in an inconceivable world, meaning the context of oh my God. Guys, this is what I'm doing right now is equivalent to philosophical calculus, okay? You know. By the way, guys, quick announcement. I found this platform where okay, anyways, I'll save this announcement, but something cool is coming up. Anyways, so let me just realign my attention here. So the shapeless, so we went from a visible dimension, a shaped observer of shapes in a shaped world. Then we went to the invisible dimension. We're like, okay, who are we when we close our eyes? A shapeless observer of shapes in a shapeless world. When I say shapeless, it's okay. Let's say a shapeless observer. Now, the shapeless observer realizes it is observing the shapes in an unknown way from an inconceivable world and context. What am I writing here? There we go. So what it is this is the human position. In front of your eyes, you're like this object that is noticing this massive objective world, right? Behind, when you close your eyes, you notice, okay, you're not just an object, you're this awareness. What is awareness? We call it mind. What is mind? What the brain is doing. So it's as if the shape dimension is being the soil, and from the soil of the materialism, there has sprouted an immaterialism. And now how that immaterialism was planted there is another talk. It's like that could include, like, we need a physicist and a physicist and a theoretical physicist and a what do you call it? Physicist, biologist, and a theologian and a psychologist for that. So what does this mean? It means civilization 1.0, which is the first prototype of human civilization we're living in, which is an honor actually, but at the same time it's hilarious, right? So civilization 1.0 is you have to stop thinking people are evil, the world is evil, it's like you have to stop hating and hating the world, and realizing it's just the world didn't know better, and this is the best it has so far. This way a person can find contentment to actually try to be in the present and wonder about the future, right? So in Civilization 1.0, it was we were raised to treat ourselves as known self in a knowable unknown world. In Civilization 2.0, which is Mr. Within's strategy and Mr. Within's vision, it's Mr. Within's really public effort. In Civilization 2.0, human consciousness has reached such an advanced appreciation of its own awareness as self in a world where we are raised to treat ourselves as unknown beings as an unknown self knowing an unknown world for a little physical while. There you go, guys. Civilization 2.0 is I'm going to talk way more and more about it. It's pretty much my life's work and my main effort of it. It's the main command behind this channel, the main agenda behind this channel, the main vision, the guiding star. The advanced civilization is the guiding star for all those human beings that looked at the past and found themselves in the present and wondered what's next. The future is waiting. It's so incredible. It's as if our minds are living ahead of us. So when we open our eyes, the moment has purpose. But when we realize we're an unknown self in an unknown world, it becomes such a different view, because for the first time you're like, wait a minute, I've been preparing for life as a known being. That means I've been convinced by what I am, right? Like I had this, one day my father came to me and asked if I believe in past lives, and I told him that this self that I am right now, I consider it to be the tip of the iceberg. So even if I see past lives and future lives to the tip of the iceberg, it's incomplete. When I say the next non-place, I'm saying if life is a place, what comes after a place? And when we look at it, this is, I think, something brilliant that religion has at least maintained, right? Is in some sense that there is something more than you. You see, when you look at human beings in society, let's say we look at all societies as if, let's say, we had this TV screen and these drones were showing aerial views of all society somehow. It's as if you're seeing pretty much people who are either acting like gods or people who believe in gods. That's what you see. Do you know what I'm saying? That means when there is no greater position than yourself, then you are acting as if your whole experience is your responsibility. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but I'm saying that when it comes to mysticism is like somebody who's like, yo, I'm seeing the observable universe, but how can I know the observable universe without knowing the unobservable universe? How can we be certain of anything we know when the unknown is encapsulating everything? You see the challenge of knowledge in the void. So there's many ways to think about the world. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. And to advance civilization is one of the greatest services in the outer realms. That means, after, let's say, imagine right now, whoever you are, for a moment, just for one moment, imagine you were the most advanced being in the world. The most advanced being in existence, just possible. The most advanced being that is possible to be. What would you do when you have become the ultimate? You will realize the ultimate no longer needs a reason to do anything, because everything is its own domain. You don't need a reason to scratch your back. When you want to scratch your back, you just scratch your back. You see what I'm saying? Imagine if you had a reason. Imagine the person's heart stopped beating and the person's like, oh my God, why? And they heard this voice in their mind, which was the voice of their heart, and the heart's like, yo man, give me a reason to keep beating. And the person's like, you kidding me right now, heart? And the person's like, yo man, I want to advance civilization, or let me say it differently. The person's like, yo man, I want to go compete in the Olympics. And the heart's like, okay, you've given me a good reason, man. All right, I'll let's do this, And I'm being playful, of course. I hope this imagery just, it's one of those, in the ether examples, just poetically. Or I shouldn't say poetically, metaphorically. But anyways, what it is I'm saying that the honor of your eyes depends on how you use them. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. I hope this episode was everything I said before. Share, subscribe, comment, like, and join.